All right, guys, welcome into the Auburn postgame show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. I'm your host, Simone Eli, alongside Wes Sinor tonight. This one just went final on the Plains. LSU gets the win over Auburn 21-17 in what was flat out a disappointing second half for Auburn at home. The Tigers were up 17-0 in the middle of the second quarter. Came out about as hot as you would hope, about as great as you would expect. I mean, Robbie Ashford looked like an all-star, only for LSU to score 21 unanswered to win this game. A lot of kind of controversial calls, some questionable calls, if you will, down the stretch. But Wes, the overall situation is just disappointing. Final couple of quarters here for the Tigers at home.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned going up 17-0. I mean, everything was kind of clicking for Auburn early on. It almost looked like they were going to run away with the game there in the first half. But then, little by little, LSU started to chip away at that lead. Auburn started to commit some errors that LSU took advantage of. There were some strange calls there in the second half. There was like this fake pass that to Coy Moore, who was like putting the ball in the air and got intercepted. Ashford got intercepted. So yeah, I mean, just not much you can do if you're committing those turnovers. I think the defense played really well. Got some pretty critical stops there down the stretch. But for Auburn tonight, just really kind of self-inflicted wounds, I think, is the main storyline, I would say.
You got a lot of comments we're getting in. If you're just tuning in, it's the Auburn postgame show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. We are recapping this Auburn loss, 21-17. A lot of folks, of course, frustrated with Brian Harsin, obviously Auburn head coach, looking for him to potentially not be the coach moving forward at Auburn. Now, we're not here to necessarily be the judge of whether, that call will be made or not, but there are some questionable things, Wes, down the stretch. When you're facing 4th and 10 from midfield, and elect to go for it, you kind of wonder about play calling scenarios. And I mean, I understand you want to go all out and do what you can to win this game, but you wonder if you want some of those back.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like they were making some pretty aggressive play calls tonight. You mentioned that 4th and 11 play, going for it there where, probably not necessary at that point in the game. I don't think. It does seem like Harsin was kind of throwing it all out there tonight. There were some different formations that they were playing around with. And I don't know, I guess, do you feel, just in your opinion, do you think he really felt like his job was on the line tonight?
He's feeling the pressure. And that, this week he tweeted or posted somewhere on some social media outlet, the Man in the Arena poem. And that right there just tells me he knows, that he's on the hot seat. It's not some big secret. He knows that all eyes are on him. He knows that it's a must-win game, that the road is not getting any easier, especially, you're going on, you're playing Georgia on the road next week. And so this was a crucial game for Auburn. This is their 5th game at home. And Robbie Ashford, credit to Robbie Ashford and his effort tonight. He went 19-38 for over 330 yards, 2 touchdowns. He really seemed to give every effort that he could, especially early on. And late in the game, they moved the ball a little bit with Tank Bigsby, and you just start to wonder where the disconnects kind of began. We're getting a lot of comments here. People frustrated with play calling. Harsin gave Auburn, this is a comment from Cody Cooper, every chance to win. And it's the truth. It's like, it was kind of like, okay, who's going to win this game? LSU, it seems to be coughing it up. Auburn seems to be coughing it up, and nobody, it's just on the stretch, it was crazy.
Yeah. The bottom line is they blew a 17-0 lead. Despite the fact that they outgained LSU, I think they really did put together some good drives during this game. Robbie Ashford really had a lot of success through the air. Obviously, take away those interceptions, but they were moving the ball. It's just once they got down to the red zone, it seemed like they were making some of those mistakes and some of those weird play calls.
Yeah.
And so I think they mentioned on the broadcast, we talked about this before we went live here, but I think they said that Auburn has only 9 points in in the second half of their last 3 games combined.
Yep.
So, that just tells me that this team is not great in making halftime adjustments.
No.
Which is something that you're going to have to do to pull some of these close games out.
Well, that's what good coaches can make halftime adjustments. And I saw this tweet. This says in the last 8 Power 5 games, including the bowl game, second half only, Auburn's punted 26 times. They've had 8 turnovers. And is 21 of 61 on third down. I mean, talk about execution down the stretch. That is miserable. That truly is. There's no other way to put that. That is not winning football. And I don't know if guys aren't buying in, if there's issues with what the execution is, what the play call is, but it's something is just not where the marriage is not working.
No, I don't think so. And the running game still hasn't hasn't been there for Auburn this year. I mean, I'm pulling up the stats right now. Auburn rushed for 101 yards on 31 attempts. That's 3.3 yards per carry.
Yeah.
I know Jarquez and Tank both had a couple nice runs here and there, but, historically at Auburn, that's kind of been the bread and butter is the running game.
Yeah.
And, you do have – everybody's been praising this backfield with Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter, but – the truth is they just haven't really been that productive this season. And I know I've mentioned the offensive line. There's been some, changes there. Everybody's kind of mixing and matching on the offensive line this season due to some injuries. I know they're down to their third string center at this point. So, going into this game, I thought it was a pretty even matchup. I thought it would be a close game. But I do feel this was kind of like a must win for Harsin and you mentioned these comments in here. A lot of people are unhappy with Harsin, and I see a lot of fire.
Deion Sanders. Someone's calling for Deion.
Deion Sanders.
Yeah,
let's bring Deion Sanders in.
A couple people calling for Deion Sanders. Guys, here's my thing. I think that the numbers can tell you a lot, and you talked about this a second ago, Wes. If you just looked at LSU's numbers offensively, and you knew those numbers before the game, I would have thought Auburn won this game by 3 touchdowns because they only threw the ball for 85 passing yards. They only rushed for 185. Brian Kelly, he seemed to be frustrated throughout the night other than when they finished the game. They weren't doing anything offensively. This defense stood tall when needed most, and think about how much they were on the field, which was a lot. Yeah. But at the end of the day, Auburn can't put points on the board after the 9-minute mark in the second quarter from a guy who is an offensive guru, supposedly, maybe in a group of 5 school.
No, this is this product is not as advertised, I don't think. if you look at what Harsin kind of hangs his hat on, just really kind of disappointing performance. You mentioned the defense. That I think they did play really well. They kept Daniels in check. He was 8 for 20 for 80 yards before he left the game.
Yeah.
The defense played as good of a game as I think you can ask of that group. Even some of these situations where Auburn, shot themselves in the foot, the defense kind of pulled them back into it and gave them another chance, and then the offense would kind of mess it up again. Sure. So, it's a slippery slope because we're near the midpoint of the season. Yeah. Auburn has to go to Georgia next week. And I don't think anybody thinks that that's going to go well.
Did that game go final yet, by the way?
For the Tigers, I don't know. Let's see.
Is anyone watching this game? Obviously, we're not watching it right now. Okay, it's a 4-point game, and Georgia has the ball.
Not finally yet. It looks like Georgia's up 26-22 with like a minute left.
Man, I was hoping Missouri would pull that one out. But you're right, and the road doesn't get any easier for Auburn. At Georgia, at Ole Miss, who just got a win today. At home against Arkansas, who at moments looked decent against Alabama. How long does this regime last? And the thing is that who is really calling the shots at Auburn right now without an actual legit athletic director? Things are just kind of like a basket case over there right now. So is there someone that can walk into his office? Surely there is someone who can walk his office and say, hey man, you don't have a job anymore. But is it as seamless as it normally would be? Should there be really no athletic director right now?
I don't think so. And this is something we've talked about on the show before where, if you think of in an alternate universe, if Alan Green was not, had not left, do you think
fired?
Maybe Harsin has, let go at this point, or at least by tomorrow. I don't know.
Well, I think it's all interconnected. Him not being there, him being forced out more or less, and him kind of seeing the writing on the wall, and the Brian Harsin pressure. Those are all go hand in hand. He's the guy that hired him. It's not working. It's no secret. It's not working. So what is the next step and when does it? And will Brian Harsin be there Monday doing the press conference to preview this Georgia game?
I think that he will. I mean, they're 3-2. This was a close game. I think if he had lost last week, I think if Auburn had lost to Missouri last week, that would have been it for him. Yeah. But I think he survives this one. He might even survive the Georgia game. But you go to Ole Miss and you lose, then I think it's probably over at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then what? Then is it the bye week after that?
I think it's the bye week after the Ole Miss game. Yeah.
The bye week after that. I mean, firing a coach in the bye week wouldn't be the first time that's ever happened. So,
no.
I mean,
and at that point, they would have a losing record if these play out. They're 3-2 now. Assuming they lose to Georgia next week, 3-3.
Yeah.
And then if they drop that Ole Miss game, I'd go below 500. I just don't see how you keep going with Harsin at this point.
Yep. I mean, I feel like it's the same old song and dance on this Auburn postgame show, and certainly appreciate the folks tuning in. But I mean, Lord Almighty, we've been saying the same thing. It seems like almost every single week, win, lose, or otherwise. It's just, okay, what's the drama today? What's the direction that's going to happen with Auburn? And at some point, at some point, Wes, the fans, the players, the program deserves to know the direction of the program. You know what I'm saying? They deserve to see things trending in an upward situation. There's frustrating situation because nobody knows where it's headed. And until a decision is made one way or the other, I mean, everyone's just kind of in limbo wondering what's going to go on. And I just don't think that it's fair to the people that invest in season tickets, to the people that invest into the program, to the players that invest into the program.
No, I mean, it's certainly looking like kind of the end of the road here, even though we're only in week 5 now. But you're right. I mean, Harsin has now had a season and a half, and there just really hasn't been anything that to be proud of, I don't think, in terms of Auburn. I mean, their biggest win, I would say, under Harsin was maybe the Ole Miss game last year.
Yep. Wes, we appreciate your cat making an appearance here in the Auburn postgame show. I mean, that's the most exciting thing that we have to talk about right now, to be honest with you.
I didn't realize he was in the frame.
But I mean, just listen. Okay, my in-laws are season ticket holders at Auburn. They have been literally for like decades. Auburn-LSU is like a premier matchup. They couldn't go to the game. They couldn't even sell their tickets. They couldn't even sell their tickets to somebody because I mean, people don't want to go to this. Go to Auburn games right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's probably time to pull the trigger sooner rather than later, in my opinion. I mean, that's just my opinion. I mean, I'm not the one calling the shots, But
it just went final in Missouri, by the way. Georgia pulled out the win, of course, Kirby.
Okay.
Yep. 26-22 the final. So Georgia squeaks by Kent State, squeaks by Missouri. I think they'll lose their number 1 standing going into next week.
Possibly. I find it interesting that CBS picked Auburn, Georgia for the 2:30 game next week. I mean,
it's a rivalry. It's the doubleheader, CBS doubleheader. So, I mean, they kind of have that's picked 2 games. Yeah. And so now you have a matchup between Georgia and Auburn, and then you have the matchup between Texas A&M and Alabama, and that certainly isn't the game that people thought it was going to be during the preseason either. No. So, I don't know, man. It's less than ideal situation over there on the Plains right now, and we'll see how it plays out. I mean, I didn't see anyone standing in the end zone like they did to Herm Edwards a couple weeks ago. Talking to Brian Harsin who's come off the field. So we'll see how it goes.
Yep.
All right, Wes. Any final thoughts before we send it out?
No, not really. Just Auburn and LSU have had some close, interesting games in the past. This was another one, I think, to add to that list. Unfortunately for Auburn, can't come out with the win tonight. But again, something drastic, I think, has to happen for Harsin to survive the season.
Yep.
And I just don't know what that is exactly. I mean, Robbie Ashford played his best game of the season, I think.
He did.
Probably won the starting job, in my opinion. If TJ Finley is healthy, I think they should still, at this point, just do with Ashford. He showed some progress, and the defense played well, but just these critical mistakes down the stretch is kind of what did Auburn in tonight.
Yep.
And you just can't keep having those kind of games. So
if there is a positive, something to take away from this, it is the play of Robbie Ashford, what he was able to do execution wise, at least in the first half and sometimes in the second half as well. So Auburn doesn't get it done. Tigers fall to LSU at home, 21-17, the final. We will see what the future of Brian Harsin looks like. A lot of frustrated fans in the comments. We appreciate you guys tuning in to the Auburn postgame show, brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. We will see you guys next week. For Wes Sinor, I'm Simone Eli. You'll have a good night.
Medical Properties Trust, at the very heart of healthcare.